right, we're here. Hey, okay. Hi, Corbin. He's just sitting there right with me, having a ball. All right, gotta move him over. Okay, so yesterday went really well. I appreciate everybody coming out and hanging out during our stream. I had a good time, and I hope people did as well. So it was one of those things where, I was trying something new, and the result of that was lots of cool engagement and interaction with folks, and yeah, well, it's just really nice. The page that we started yesterday, I finished, and I thought I'd post that today as a sort of response to so many people coming out, hanging out, and being involved. It was really I really appreciated that, and so I wanted to get that page posted, and I'll post the Bear Sasquatch page on the end of the day, type thing. So yeah, what do you want? You want to say something? Corbin wants to say something, everybody. Here we go.
Hey, how you doing, everybody? Those very cool, my babies. All right, all right, all right.
He's a weird cat. Okay. It's yeah. Just a sec. We're all set to go here, and yeah. Just turning off stuff. Okay, so yeah, I'm on early today, earlier than I normally am, and so with that in mind, might throw off a little bit of a routine, but that's okay. Let's see, what did I talk about? One of the things I talked about yesterday was get this out of the way. There we go. Little doodly doos everywhere. So one of the things I talked about yesterday, amongst having some fun and doing other stuff, was the way that the new book is working out, and hi, how you doing? Welcome aboard. And the fact that it just feels good to get when you get a project done and you get something put out that you have a sense of completion, which is always good. But in addition to that, it really gives you a chance to retool yourself, because sometimes there's that anxiety and pressure that builds up over finishing this part of the project, finishing these pages, finishing the art, the writing, the colors and lettering, and then you get into, now what do I do with it? And so there comes a process of assembling it all, picking and choosing what goes in and doesn't. And then how do I go about getting the book formatted and all those things? And then it comes to get the book released. And it's really important you give yourself a second and go, okay, good, that's done. And then allow yourself the recognition that on you go to the next thing. The way that I'm running right now is that I'm operating so far behind the amount of pages that are prepared and ready to exhibit. Because in 2023-24, I've done over 700 one-page stories. Well, one-page story pages. Because some of those stories end up being, 2, 3, 4, 5-page stories at times. But we've done over 700 pages. And with that in mind, one of the things that I am trying to do is catch up. But catch up in a sort of, an honest way. I don't want to release 9 books at once or in a short, compacted amount of time, because I can't expect people to want to pick up all of those in order to find the page that they might have suggested in whichever volume. So we're releasing them as we go, and putting out a couple books a year. So last year was One Page Extravaganza 1, and Alphabet Book being portrait format, single image, really short pieces, having some different approaches to things, and then one page volume 1 is where we do all of our one-page stories as we've been producing them. So with the range of material that we've been doing and different tools that we've been using to create those, I'm trying to get a spread of those pages across each volume, and then at the same time with the different mediums and all those sort of things. But at the same time, I'm also trying to get at least one thing, one of the suggested page ideas from each of the people that have been submitting stuff. So there's our first 78 page, one page, there's 78 one page alpha. That's going to be the only alphabet book, but because the next portrait format one page, the next portrait format book that I'll be doing is one page stories that are drawn in that format. So with number 2, it's exactly the same as number 1. And again, it's just more pages with more people's suggestions trying to be represented here, and more different medium that I'm using. So it's the same beat as the last dance that we did. And so I'm really happy to have that done and happy to have that out. And we've already got work on the next 2. But I'm finishing off Stream of Conceited as number 1, which will be our next release. And after that will be One Page Extravaganza Volume 3. So, it's going to take time. I'm always going to be operating behind the amount of pages that I've produced. Just how it's going to be. And I think I'll always be operating in a year from the production page. So the books that I've put out now are pages from 2023, and the next book that comes out of one page is going to be pages from 2024. But that will be towards the end, the fall winter of this year. So it's it's always going to operate a little bit behind. Let's see. I've got the book of suggestions together here. I appreciate all the suggestions that came in yesterday during the stream, and that is what we put into producing today's page. And it was drawn in purple color erase pencil and scanned, and then colored digitally with the text put on digitally. And I focused the text along the lines of the suggestions that were coming in. So it was about the challenges of needless administration. And we separated it from, because you have to collapse the suggestions into the pot and mix them up, right? In a case where you've got numerous suggestions coming from people. The initial intention of this page was needless administration for teaching. But then it became needless administration for a supply company because of the next suggestion that had come in. So see, it's got to be a little bit fluid as we go. And I think it turned out okay. I'm pretty pleased with it. And up next, I've got a plan today to work straight on pencil crayon. So I've got a piece of cardstock laid down for us to work on today. And I grabbed a tray of pencil crayons for us to work with. So between those two things, I think we're on our way. The only other factor I think needs to be getting my pencil sharpener out. Right, Corbin? Corbin has been side by side with me all day. It's funny, I did 4 hours of streaming yesterday, and Corbin spent the entire day asleep. And then here I'm doing just a couple of things today, and he's right on top of me, this guy. So, okay, so I'm getting out pencil sharpener, and we'll pull out. Now the pencils that I've got are So one of the things I do, and I'll switch back to the other camera again. Akira Kurila, I'm trying to pronounce that correctly. I'm probably not doing it, but welcome aboard. Thanks for coming out. So one of the things I'll do with the art supplies and all the trays that I have, and you can see those in the video yesterday, or in the stream yesterday, I did a walkthrough of the studio. And I have a number of these trays behind me, okay, and that I keep the different mark making tools that I have in there. And so I will do a guide like this for myself. The reason that I do that is sometimes the color that is, when you have materials like these pencils and they supply you a color at the bottom, does not necessarily mean that's the color of the lead. It's challenging, and oftentimes when you're working on something and you're looking at the bottom of the pencils and thinking that's the color that I've just grabbed, and then you find out, unfortunately, no, that's not the color that it is. There's a variation on that. And if you're a fussy guy like me, that can be problematic, because you will inevitably do something that makes you look at it in your image and go, oh, I ruined it, which is just, there's no point in doing that. No point in doing that to yourself. Everything can be fixed. So I've got the suggestion book out. Now the suggestion book is where all these one-page story suggestions that people give me, a couple sentences, 3 words, a line of dialogue, something you read on the back of a Happy Meal, whatever. I write them down in the book. And the next thing that I do is go through the book quickly, grab something and do that page for today. And you'll see I check them off after I've done it. So I've been trying to catch up on a number of older pages this year. And, I don't want to leave things hanging too long, but we've still got quite a few suggestions to work from, which is nice. It's simply a case of, time, really. But we're good. We're getting there. We're getting there, folks. Okay, so I'm going to pick one of these things in here today, and what do we got? Running a first trip to a pizzeria is today's suggestion, and that comes from Jay Slater. And great. So how do we go about doing a first trip to a pizzeria as a suggestion? First off, I'll write it down on a scrap of paper, which you would think would be really available to me. Are you taking off? Corbin's going across the room. He's had his moment. So, first trip to a pizzeria is our suggestion, and that is from Jay Slater. Now, that's somebody I know who's done his first single-story graphic novel that he's written and illustrated recently. And I'm going to be having him on the stream soon. But I don't want to give away his real name, because he has his pen name and his real name. But Jay Slater is what you can look up. First trip to a pizzeria, Jay Slater. So, there we go. There's our suggestion. So, we have to build this story, structure this whole thing, and I'll put that down there so you can see it for the time being. We have to structure this whole thing from that. Well, I have no real thoughts on this. So let's start off with, I think, drawing a pizzeria, drawing the exterior of the building. Sometimes when you're working on an overall story, you need a way to contextualize the story for the viewer. And a really good way to do that, as I've explained before, is to draw specifically the context. And so oftentimes you'll see in sequential stories where we see the outside of the location. Like in an Avengers comic from Marvel Comics, you'll have the Triskelion, which is the adventure's headquarters. So there's the first panel. And then it cuts immediately into the characters inside, arguing about whatever some bad guy's done and what they're going to do about it. And, or you'll see, one of my favorite examples is always going to be, Ted Knight's narration of Super Friends cartoon, where he's, meanwhile at the Hall of Justice, and you see the outside of the Hall of Justice. And then it cuts to one of the characters at the screen where they keep, they're able to have video conferences with whatever people are in the field. And such and so has done a bad crime and we got to get him. So those things are fun. They draw the viewer in. Clyde's Fans was a thing that was done by Seth, and Seth did that. And he would have a shot of the exterior of the fan store that the book is primarily based in. And it's a really healthy way to draw that reader in, to let them understand where they are. If you've got characters that are in different locations, in the course of your story, if you've got different elements going on in your story that transfer the characters in one place, and then we transfer our story into other characters in a separate place, the reader's not going to understand that they're not all in the same location unless you do something to differentiate that. And in this case, here they are at the Hall of Justice, here they are at the other team's headquarters. And then that helps the reader to understand the overall structure of your story, and to say that, I'm aware now where things are located, so I can more readily understand the story notes. Okay, so that's what we're gonna start with today. Now I've got all these colored pencils, and I'm just thinking of what I'll use for our drawing. I think this one is kind of a fun value. So we'll start here. So as usual, anybody that would like to put their suggestion for a one-page story, a couple sentences, line of dialogue, 3 words, whatever, go ahead and put it in the chat. Or you can put it on any of the social media posts that I put together, or in the comments for this video if the video is already over. Okay, so let's see. So I'm going to start with, in this top piece of the page, I'm going to start drawing a pizzeria. There's a funny comedy movie. I can't remember what it is. All I know is that James Caan is in it. And there's a restaurant called The La Trattoria, or something like that. And what's funny with that is La is the word the. So the restaurant is called The Trattoria. It's pointed out a number of times in the course of this film. It's so, but it's a Italian restaurant as well. So that's kind of fun. All right. So I'm gonna get the old ruler-iski out here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to structure together some of the basic parts of our restaurant, and then we're going to start adding color to everything overall. In this way, we're going to sort of put together a composition as we go along. So once we've got the outside of the pizzeria, now we get to go to the inside of the pizzeria. One of the fun things in a film that you can possibly consider as an example for yourself for when you're putting together a structured little story like this is, okay, so our exterior shot is the outside of the restaurant. Our secondary shot can be a picture of, say, a concierge, greeting some people and saying, seating for 2, follow me this way. And then a third panel could be, a waiter going by with a couple of plates of, some sort of, Italian food stuff. And by doing those different things, and this is something that you'll see a number of shots in an motion picture, is because what it does is it invests you in the totality of the environment. It sort of draws you in like you're entering into the restaurant, and you're going through these associations of the person that greets you and says, "We got a seat for you." And then there's the person who's walking around serving food, and that's your whole impetus for being there, so you're really going to notice that. And then the people, you sit down at the booth, and while seated at said booth, you're, then the conversation begins. Then your characters invest in the moment. And so it allows you the significance of having the viewer fully comprehend that they're in this restaurant. This is the layout. This is the situation. These are the types of people's around. And then you can take it whatever direction you need to take it as far as your story goes. You can have, David Mamet style dialogue where they're, they're plotting a heist of some kind. Or you can have, a comedy where somebody comes to sit down with the people at the table who looks exactly like the Godfather. And how awkward is this? Are you really the Godfather? And I appreciate this question. So you could take it into a comedic sort of a bent. That's from a real movie with Matthew Broderick, by the way. And those little things, those little aspects of, I'm going to zoom in on this so it's a little easier to see. Come on. It does not like how I try to zoom this silly thing. There we go. We got something happening. No. There we are. Okay, we got it happening. It's all happening, people. So we've got these potential things that we can institute into our story that that allows the reader to truly understand where they are and how everything relates to the overall narrative. And the more that you do things like that, the more that you simplify those little pieces inside of your story, allows you to spend the time that you need, the space that you need to get to the meat and potatoes of everything. It gives you the space that you need for the interesting dialogue and the conflict and the relationships between characters, and because we understand this place, we understand where people are. If you've got police story, let's say, and you can start it off inside of the police car where the two officers are sitting there, watching the street, and there's a person who's walking across the road that we can see through the front windshield of their car, and we get to hear them say, "Okay, that's the guy. Are you sure that's the guy? That's the guy." I hope so. We've been waiting here for hours, and so now we understand a little bit of the larger narrative that way. He says, well, try to join from time to time. I'm working on comics. Most of them are short stories. Appreciate your content. Very inspiring. That's very nice of you to say that. I appreciate that. Yeah, you're very welcome. I post each page. I post the page each day on Instagram and Facebook. And so if you scroll through there, you can see X amount of pages that have been done in the last little while. But thanks very much for the nice words. What are you doing? I have a studio cat that is desperate for attention constantly. And so he's over here being a nuisance and disrupting things. Okay, so here's the start of our Italian restaurant. And let's put a little bit of, we'll figure out some second floor in a second, but what we really want is to get that awning hanging over the windows that it's just one more little additional element that helps the reader to understand where we are. That's very nice of you to say. Okay. I like that people are trying to do short stories. I really do. Have you ever done a full book? Have you done a, let's say 20 to 24 page book, a single issue standardized sequential book in North America here, or a 16-page story. Let's go with that. Have you done any of those? That's because at times, especially when you're sort of, you're working on stuff, and it's healthy to work your way up. And if you're comfortable doing shorts, if you're comfortable doing, 4, 8, 12, 16-page stories, that's great. That's perfect. I would advocate more and more people do that, as opposed to this whole objective. I'm going to do a 6-volume, 400-page magnum opus. That's sort of the same style as Dune, and it's great. The challenge of that is if it's your first time out of the gate, and this is objectively, what the direction that you're going right off the hop. Unfortunately, oftentimes people don't make it, and largely because they. It's not that they're overreaching. It's not that they're having unreasonable expectations. It's just that it's a big swing for your first time picking up a bat, But if you've been working on shorts and are enjoying those, that's perfect. Before you know it, you may feel compelled to do longer ones, or you may not. I find that there's some degree of liberation to be able to tell stories in a short form and a long form, because you can, sometimes you feel a story is going a specific way, and you can decide to draw it to a close, or, oh, sorry, Corbin's trying to get out of the studio for a sec. Excuse me. All right, buddy. Oh, all right, buddy. There you go. Okay. Might as well put my glasses on now, see what I'm doing. So, where was I? Oh, start of the year, I was doing a little sci-fi story that I just sort of had an itch I needed to scratch. And I've got 15 pages in, and then had a bit of finality for what was going on in that story. So I did this 15-page story where I'm building up the introduction of all these separate characters and bringing them to a specific point where they're all in the same location together. And then there's a cumulative action that takes place there that leaves it on a to be continued. And that's good enough for me for now. There's no, I feel no necessity right now that I have to continue that further. For the time being, I enjoy doing 15 pages. And from there, I can come back to this and continue it on from that point or something else. But it was nice to just be able to do that short piece. He says, longest was 20 pages, a political comic pamphlet where each page was a single story, but as a whole, it was belonging together. Fantastic. Working on a book right now, a biography. It's very difficult to do. It can be. They sure can be, especially if, of course, it depends on the amount of details known about the person that you're doing the biography of. There can be some challenges in that, how much do we really know about the person? Sometimes you'll see people do biographies or people do stories and they'll have a character within the confine, like within the context of the story, and they don't know anything about this character and this real life person. I saw a comic where they inserted Nikola Tesla in there, into their story. Now, a number of people have done that. But the challenge that I found with this one was, the way that they talked about Nikola Tesla. It's almost like somebody read Wikipedia and went, there we go. Let's do it. I completely understand this guy now. It's hard to get the complexity of characters, especially in a biographical sense, if one doesn't take some time to get to know and understand said characters. All right, so I've got this framework for the restaurant. Now I'm starting to add value to the drawing. We're going to start adding a whole bunch of color and developing up the front of this restaurant before we move on. The thing I like about pencil crayons is I tend to really enjoy the combinatory aspect of putting down the different colors from the different pencils, and how that yields all kinds of interesting colors that you wouldn't do if you just picked up that specific color to use. Paint's the same way. Washes of paint over an area will give you all kinds of interesting new values. When I was in high school, I had a teacher named Brian Fry, and fantastic guy. He did abstract pieces, and he would do, on a 3x4-inch abstract painting, he would do 30, 40 washes of value. It's like, so those colors, they all had this luminosity, but when you find out how and why, it's because they're not, a store-bought color. They're this really thin glazing that he would be doing of all these different values and all these different ways to make up the image. So I thought it was kind of cool, kind of interesting. Sort of clearly rubbed off in some way on me. All right, so I'm trying different values to find the outside of the building here. I think what I'm going to do is that there's a couple of different ways. I got a piece of paper, I'll show you this on the back of here. All right, so when you're doing, send me okay, if you're on social media stuff, send me a link and let's get a look at what you're doing. I'd love to see it. So if you're doing bricks, say on a brick wall here, the real operating rule of thumb is that the bricks are all halfway across the next level down, right? And so as you're putting your bricks in, you're just staggering them like that. Now, that's one way to do them, is with the outline. Another way is to do a soft application of value on the brick, and then you can add in some interesting details as you go across, each of the bricks. So like you'll take a darker value and you'll start putting in some of that edging, some of that structure, just to build up your brick to look more interesting. But by doing so, it gives you a very different style of brick than the previous example up above. It's just trying some different things, some different combinations of things, really. But I think what I want to do is that I'm going to use a bit of the former here and place in the space between the windows a brick wall pattern. And this will give us a little more interesting complexity in our page here, our panel specifically. I've got an old REM song stuck in my head from hearing it in the car with my wife yesterday. It's funny. So, and again, even I'm staggering. How much bigger can we get you? Oh, you're going to be so finicky. Excuse me. There we go. So now we've got, it's a little bit of complexity to it, but at the same time, it's going to result in, a more identifiable visual. Like I said before, it's less about, if you want to make it as simple as possible for the reader. And depending on what you do to execute that principle, if they understand it's a pizza joint, if they understand it's daytime, nighttime, if they understand that it's a nice place, it's a seedy place, all of those different sort of things that you put into your visual can really change the name of the game. UK says, I don't use social media, but I could copy a link to one of the comics if you like. Sure. Yeah, please do. Send it to my email or whatever. Hey, you're back. Come on. I have a very needy cat. All right, so there's our first piece of brick wall, and we'll just continue this along. So one of the fun things about this is that I'm going to repeat some of this pattern within this darker value. This in the same way as I have this pattern coming out of this darker value here. Because, this is how shadows and light work, right? And then we can add a little bit of hashes, little mark making to each of these bricks as we go along. They don't have to be perfect. They just have to be serviceable for our story. So don't sweat yourself out. That's not the perfect bricks. That's not a perfect pattern. It's a 20 page story. It's pretty cool. I like the fact that you broke your 20 page piece up in increments. Each page is, let me understand this. Each page was a single story belonging together as a whole. It's a really smart approach to it because it allows you the facility to try a different array of things from page to page or part of the story to part of the story. If this page is executed in this kind of a fashion with this sort of frenetic energy, let's say, and the next page is far more subdued and paced out because the characters therein are more reserved, then that also helps to push, little extra incidentals into each of the characters and how the reader associates them. This person's energetic. This person is, cold and calculating. This person is, that's fantastic. It's a fantastic thing to try different execution for each page, each character, each facet of the story. Hi, Susanna. How are you? Welcome aboard. We're doing the suggestion first trip to a pizzeria today, Susanna. And anybody else that's joined us. We've got some fun things coming up in the studio here. I've got a whole bunch of, it's funny, I put out a comic one-page story today that was, talking about the joy of administrative paperwork. And I've got a lot of it I'm trying to do right now. So, I didn't suggest it though. It was suggested during the stream. But boy, did that, could I identify with that, So, fun stuff. Okay, so the bricks have now moved up into the shadowed area, which is kind of fun. It gives it a little bit of a little bit of diversity and value and a little more dimension to the image overall. Because you realize parts are in the light, parts are in the dark. Doo-dah, doo-dah. AK's story was about deportation. Each page told a short story how someone avoided his or hers. Oh my. That's fantastic. Yeah, that's see, there you go. You get to do the individual story for each person and explore them in an identifiable way that's, well, interconnected, removed from the parts of the narrative that are out on the opposite sides of it. That's really smart. Because everybody, this is the beautiful thing. We did, so the comic company that we have, I've only put 3 hardcovers online, but locally we've printed 75 books, and in comic format, soft comic format. And we did 16 anthologies amongst that mix of a book that we called the Apartments Anthology. And my thinking behind that is and this falls suit into your book and other books like it, okay. When you look at an apartment building, people see different things. When I look at an apartment building, in my head, I associate apartment buildings as a whole bunch of different stories all going on at once in the same place. An apartment building is much like an anthology in the sense that each apartment, what goes on inside of that apartment is an entirely different narrative than the apartment beside it. And the journey and the life and the expectation of all that is wildly varied, right? So, I appreciate anthologies where you take the time to, if there's some sort of governing structure or theme, and yet everything that's within it is its own unique thing. Susanna says, I like pizza at least once a month. Right on. I talked about pizza a little bit yesterday during the book launch for One Page 2. I talked about one of my sons, very finicky eater, in relationship to spectrum, but he wouldn't eat anything bread, and yet he loved pizza and lasagna, pasta. And whenever anybody would start to explain that those are in the bread food group, I would almost launch across a room and go, hey, what's the weather like today? Or some completely ridiculous, nonsensical sentence just spits right out of me, just to disrupt the fact that they're about to tell Sean that, hey, you're eating bread, buddy. No!
That's the only bread we can get them to eat.
Diving across the room to put out that grenade. So here's, so the bricks, I'm trying to make the bricks subtly larger as the wall goes along. And just to, give a sense of direction here. Thank you, everybody, by the way, that came out yesterday. And those of you that sent your well wishes as well. We had a lot of fun yesterday. And then I had a little lie down. Because that was a lot of involvement, because I always want to, we talk about ideas here, and we talk about process, and we talk about all kinds of things, but that burns up the body sugar. All that thinky. So here's our final segment here. I haven't put a border on this panel because, I could. Depends on how I feel about the finished page in and of itself. Does it all have to be lovely and final, and everything has a fine border around it, or whether it does or not? I do a lot of that stuff in Photoshop anyways, so oftentimes I don't feel it's entirely necessary unless I'm really laying out a tight page with the pencils, or otherwise I just go, and there we are. So if I go over, I extend like this, I don't, I'm not overly concerned. If you're looking for fun examples of brickwork in art, look at how guys like Dave McKeon, guy that did the cover of the Sandman comics, and or Bill Sienkiewicz, however you pronounce it. It's not Sienkiewicz though, because his dad anglicized it. Because they both have very different ways of drawing bricks, but at the same time, there's this wonderful, similar application in by association, that if the bricks are varied in size and move in different directions or whatever, and just the artist's pencil goes in whatever way it goes, that's fine. Again, the brick wall, if you can understand it as a brick wall, it's done its job, because that means the visual aspect of it is serviceable to the narrative. Is it perfect? Maybe not, but is that a stylistic choice? Sure can be. So don't get too hung up on your brick wall being perfect. Okay, so we've got a whole bunch of different. Where are you? What color are you? You'll do. We've got a whole bunch of different bricks coming in here, and I've lost my pencil case, or my sharpener. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come in with a blue. I tend not to draw with in pencil crayon. I tend not to pull out the black pencil very, very quickly. Corey says, your apartment of many stories reminds me of Dropsy Avenue by Eisner. Oh, that's right. Will Eisner's Dropsy Avenue. I had already, I hadn't read that at the time, but you're right. It really, that did remark to me in the same way. I don't know why I don't use that example. Yeah, it's, if you get a chance, now, bearing in mind that from the time of execution to today, a few days have gone by, but Will Eisner's work is something to be studied, folks, if you're interested in, the foundations of storytelling, words and pictures. I refer to it like that, and I refer to it as sequential art. And, other people I know are like, sequential art? Because Eisner does. And if Eisner, who started in, I think he started in the 30s, late 30s, when he started producing his stories. So first graphic novel in North America was, and I mean a specific long form story done in a collected edition, was Eisner. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different things that he had for firsts. So his book on how to write and draw comics is the one that has had, I think, the most influence on me. And even though it's some of the things have dated about his work, unfortunately, there's a common trope from that time period of the black sidekick character who, is not entirely removed from the jungle pips that, Winsor McCay would do in 1905, but so there's some sensitivities that people might have a problem with, but if you can get past that, treasure trove of information and brilliant examples of work. Okay, so I was mentioning a few minutes ago I don't do black. Pencil crayon. And because I tend to like the combination of a deep brown or an umber and a blue like you see here, kind of a Prussian blue, just a nice, slightly darker blue that you'll often see in people using water. Yeah, I appreciate that comment, Corey. That was great. Contract with God, I think, is the one that may have been the first long form collected story. So I'm kind of using in, this is sort of a green brown that I'm using right now, just to put some interesting values in these windows as I go. And then I'm going to come in with this, the umber that I was referring to. And so now you can see this. It's a sort of, and then as you layer this up, it goes from being a kind of charcoal value and deepens as we go along, so that eventually you've got a nice, somewhat luminous black value that starts coming through the umber and the deep blue combination. So give it a try. I'll show you. Here's our blue. All right, so here's our blue on the piece of paper. I gotta do something to stabilize this stupid camera. It's annoying me. And then as we go over with the umber, so you start to see the black coming out of that. Try that out. Give it a try, folks. It's it can be for a really, it can make for a really interesting deep black value in a pencil crayon drawing, as opposed to just going straight into it. And you know, the only challenge, of course, is that you would need to do a few applications in order to get it to resonate dark enough. It's really only ever going to be a kind of deep charcoal value. But it's doable, and you can get a range of value, a shift in the value. So yeah, something to think about. Okay, so I'm just going to come in with these other windows. We've as yet to do the awning. But I like building it up. It takes me a while to draw a pencil crayon because I like to build up the values. I like to build up the combination of colors. And then I also like to cut back. What I mean by cutting back is to come in with a white, maybe a paint, maybe a pencil crayon, maybe depending on, you know, if it's on a dark surface, pencil crayon can work advantageously. I'm sorry, but otherwise it might have to be like a white jelly roll pen or a paint marker or correction fluid, something like that, to push back some of the areas, push in some negative space. So I'll put this light blue in here as a base, and then we're going to move up the building a little bit. We'll get our awning put in. We've got to put our text on our awning. The La Trattoria. So I've got this deep green that I put a little bit of it in the window. So I'm going to spread this across the front of the building here as well, just to put some interesting shifting values across the front, instead of the whole building just being a flat value. You know, allow those color shifts in there, allow those adjustments of light, the eye. Am I missing stuff? Just making sure. So yeah, so we're just going to come in and put some more of these elements in the composition. This is me pushing the windows, insetting the windows by putting a line here on the one side of the window, because this tells our eye that this window is set back. I should adjust that over. Sorry about that, folks. Yeah, so we did a really indie alternative edition in our anthology series of apartments. So there's 15 New Apartments Anthology. And they're called a New Apartments Anthology because previously I'd done 2 issues of the Apartments Anthology. And I thought, and they were years apart, so I thought I'd differentiate them. But then we did a really kind of different alternative zine format version on a more flat, more of a cardstock, very, very indie style approach to publishing an anthology in this zine format. So instead of, so the thing that we would do is there'd be a different, every book had a different cover of some sort of motif around apartment buildings, with a whole diverse approach to how we did it. Some of it's collage, some of it's cartoony, some of it is photo montage, some of it is painted, and just this array of different covers. And when we did, and then when you would open it up, the contents page is the buzzer of, you know, of a building, so that when you go to get into an apartment building, there's all the apartment's tenants and a little button beside there so you can buzz to say, can you let me in? And so we would do page numbers on the buttons, and then the title and the creators on the registry namespace for the buzzer. And so we did that on each of our apartments books. But when we did the alternative one, the cover was a collage of like a camping ground and a bunch of tents and set up that way. And when you opened it up, it was a map of, we actually used a map of the town of Walnut Grove, a little house on the prairie, but each of the locations would be a page number and the creators and the title of the story. So, you know, just taking that motif even farther into the book, into the publication of the book. And, you know, as new stories, as new creators were coming in and out of each book, we even went so far as to start having post-its or post-ups, like a taped up sign from the, you know, a message from the superintendent. We'd like to welcome, you know, new stories submitted by so-and-so and so-and-so. And also, please remember to take out your recycling. just nonsense, but really exploring the idea of it and taking that farther along than, you know, the initial conception. So that was kind of fun. We really enjoyed doing those, but these were all published and distributed locally, and, you know, a few hundred units of each book. And they, you know, I don't have any, I have a couple of copies of each book in the house here, but aside from that, they all went out into the area. So that was kind of fun. We ended up publishing through RP Comics, Runciman Press. But we switched from Runciman Press to RP Comics because it's not about me. It's about the press representing all the different creators that are in it. And we would give copies to the creators, and as long as we covered the expense of the production, that was good. Off you go. We ended up publishing it all said and done between those and comic jams and things like that, about 300 people. So it's kind of a real fun adventure. We'll try to join next time, have an appointment with my brother in a pub. Well, there you go. See you through soon, and thanks. Thanks very much for coming out, and enjoy your pub time. So yeah, so those, sometimes those ideas, they can really take a life of their own, and you can really explore some fun and interesting new ways of trying to put out a book, trying to put out an anthology. I think a lot when I'm putting together a project. I think a lot about the execution of said project. Like with the one-page extravaganzas, having where is it now? Having this at the start of the book, or how each page is laid out for you to read, and by having this in place, it lets people know here's examples of the original art. This is where each finished page is showcased. There's the suggestions from followers on social media. And here's where I describe what I was thinking during the creative process. And so when someone looks at the page, they understand the underlying structure of each page. So little things like that. I'm always thinking intensely about, oh no, I'm late. Oh no, you're not. Oh yes, I'm early, Linda. It's not you, it's me. Hi, everyone. Welcome aboard, Linda. Welcome aboard, Tim. Okay, so I'm going to put in this awning now. And does anybody have a suggestion for the name of our pizzeria for today's story? Does anybody have a pizzeria name they'd like to suggest? Something other than some corporate chain of pizzerias. If so, please put it in the chat. No basement pizza. Okay, there we go. Thank you, Corey. No basement pizza. All right, so I've got this red here. So we'll put this on the sign here. So what I'm doing is, as I'm putting these letters in order to force the idea for the viewer that this sign, the warp of the sign, the bend of the sign, I could put the letters down at the bottom part, but I think it's a little bit more interesting if I bend the letters with the shape of the sign. No basement. So I'm going to put no basement here. And then we'll put pizzeria in here as well. But if I can at least get no basement on this sign here. And then I'm going to add, so the backdrop of this sign is going to be some green. Oh, my phone is buzzing. Not perfect lettering by far. There's a reason I don't hand letter my things. Where are we at? Right? Everybody saying hi to everybody else. That's awesome. I find that when I'm doing pages, I'll oftentimes put signage up. I'll letter signage up by hand as I'm drawing it, instead of allowing it, despite the fact that I'm going to digitally do the lettering for the page. I won't, in the case like this sign, no basement, I'll put this in by hand, as opposed to utilizing the tools that I use for other means. Just being, of mind to recognize the fact that, I could use that for this as well. Silly person. Oh, basement. There's our little circle. So there's our one sign, and then we'll put up a little neon for the pizzeria part. Linda says, hi, buddy. Yeah. Lifted an eyebrow. It's about the most attention Corbin is giving right now. It's funny how much that cat slept yesterday. Okay, so I'm using a lighter green along the top, and then I'm going to change the value a little bit as I move down on the sign. Direct light, indirect light. My thinking behind that is that see, I'm grumbling at my pencils because of this situation that I told you about earlier. The colors of these pencils is not exactly the color that's shown at the bottom of the pencil. So it's almost like a crapshoot which one you're picking up. I don't know. It's a silly thing sometimes when you're working and you're being really specific about your colors and little fine little details, and then when you scan it, and depending on how you scan it, you're going to lose some things. I found that so specifically for the page that I did with the yellow pencil on the dark blue cardstock. It really, depending on, it took me 3 or 4 different goes. I think it was about 4 different goes in order to get, the luminosity of the scan right, so that you could see that there was yellow in there and that there was blue in there, but even still it was muted, so it's tricky. So here's our no basement sign. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put another building right up against the side of our pizza place. And my thinking for that is that, much like a larger city where you've got all kinds of buildings that are side by side by side by side, is that you're going to have, your sign is going to go right to the edge of it, so you can maximize the amount of display area that you have. So let's see how we do this. I'm trying to think of what combination I can do, and I think it might end up being a digital letter in this case, because I'm going to have pizzeria and neon lights, and I think I'll just do that in the next stage of things. So we've got our, we've got our signage in, we've got the main floor of our building going in, and then I'm just going to come up and I'm going to put a couple of more little guidelines here that are going to allow us to put in a little bit of a view inside of our second floor. Apartments and windows and so forth. And this is continuing the same windows upstairs. There we go. So, and then I'm going to continue this brick pattern that we, what color did I use? It wasn't you. So we're going to continue the brick pattern up above the building. Maybe it was you. So up here on the second floor is where we're going to have more of those bricks. So that just, keeps that moving up. So I suppose you can tell I got an idea for the top of the page, or the top of the panel being about, let's say there, right? I got some funny responses to the one-page story read-alongs that I was showing playlists of during yesterday's stream. I got some funny messages about those. I didn't know how those would really go over with everybody. I've done a few, I've done them in the past and posted them up on YouTube, but I've never really actually featured those before on the stream, so it was fun. I got a request for the Jeff Goldblum I mentioned yesterday.
Have you recorded the Jeff Goldblum one yet?
So now I got to do that. Yes, yes. So, if you missed the brick talk earlier, I talked about you can either start to define your brick wall by doing the outsides of the bricks and figuring out are you spacing them that way, or you can fill in the volume of the brick and then put some detail above that. So thank you very much, everybody, for all your support yesterday. There we go. So you get the idea. Yeah, so let's do this. Let's just go ahead and do this right now. I'm going to use another sheet of paper, excuse me. Now, the reason I've pulled this out is, let's talk about the structure of our page. The suggestion for today is, because, it takes a while to draw in pencil crayon, and I don't know how exciting that is. The suggestion for our page today is from Jay Slater. It's First Trip to a Pizzeria. First trip to a pizzeria. And so, we've established already on our image that we've drawn the outside pizzeria, right? And then some of the ideas that we talked about for this first trip to a pizzeria are, we've got right off the hop, we can have an introduction to the interior where we've got the concierge who is saying, holding a few menus in hand and saying, "This way, please," right? So there's our second identifier for the audience to understand that we've gone to the pizzeria, we've now stepped inside and are being directed to our seat, and then we can have a waiter going by holding some plates of food up above their head, drawing this very basically. So that's my waiter sound. And so then there's our waiter. And the last piece that we can insert for this sort of drawing our reader into the environment, I think, has to be, here's your seats. And so the question then becomes for ourselves is that when they're directed to the table, are they alone? Thank you, Linda, for putting the suggestion up. I appreciate that. So the next part of this development of this story is we move across, and we're restaurant. Here's the maitre d'. Here's the waiter. Here is the booth that we've been led to, and of course, narratively, visually we know we're moving through the space, but narratively, you can have little pieces of dialogue that invest the reader more. Like, sure, if you'll come with me, is it your first trip to the city? Is it your first trip to the restaurant? Oh, you've never been. Are you from the city? What your party is already here waiting for you. And so we can add in those little elements as we move along. And so that combination between the text having dialogue that's different from the visuals that are being represented, we're moving through the space with the visuals. So we don't need the text to say, let me take you to your table. Oh, watch out for the waiter. Here you go. This is where you have to sit down. We don't need to say those things. We can say instead some little conversational parts that draw the viewer in just a tad more, just a tiny bit more, so that they understand the overall situation more clearly. That's the way I think we should go about doing the top part of this page. And then when it comes to where we go from there, well, that's basically the secret sauce. That's where we have all kinds of options and alternatives. And that first principle I think the first principal factor that makes us have to have some sort of direction where we're going. Which are we going to? It's the first time in a restaurant, and here they just sit at the table, and now we have to order our food. And what do you think is good? And they look at the menu, and they're like, "Oh, I don't know what any of these things are." And first trip to a pizzeria, we didn't understand a single thing about what we were eating, or ordering. That's one opportunity. Or another opportunity is, well, if it's your first trip to the city, here we're short on tables, so we're gonna sit you with these people in this booth, and then we've got a very different kind of story. And so here's the awkward social situation of you're sitting, across from people that you've never met, and for all you know, it's the Godfather, right? Like there, we go back to that Godfather joke where, "It's your first time in the city. I'd like to welcome you on behalf of New York." So we've got that potentiality, and it's like, the one person says to the other, "That looks like the Godfather," and the other person goes, "Shh, be quiet, he can hear us." You have a little bit of fun like that. Or they're sat across from some people that are non-communicative, and they're like, "Hi, oh yes, so we just came down here. We live out there in the Midwest. We're all potato farmers, and it's sure neat, the big city." And the other people just stare at them with these grim faces. Like, so my point is that from one simple setting up the environment and all of those things, and it's to use a bad pun, serving up the table. When we come to this point here, this is kind of like a nexus point, so that the direction that follows for the next part of the page can go so many different ways. And really, if everybody that comes across this page, if everybody was to do the same thing for the first half of the page, it's make sure you introduce the readers to the situation, and make sure you introduced a bit of the context of the world that they're in, and then that's the point right there. I think that everybody's differences really come to light. The different applications of the story can take wild, varied differences from that point. I mean, you could do it here where he's serving a plate of food that's alive, jumping off the plate. You could already start doing things like that. But I think it's really at this point, the decisions that you make. Are there other people there? What are they like? Is the table clean? All the different factors therein. So, like the page that I did today, that I posted today, based on our suggestions from yesterday, one of the this is a really mundane, I'll get my big head on the road. This is a really mundane page as far as story goes. But when we were getting our suggestions yesterday during the live stream, it's about a person having to do all this additional administration, even though people could have just checked things off on the computer and saved so much time, been so much more efficient. And so because we've got this kind of a suggestion for our story, what it lets us do is have a moment really where we can explore just this character in this context, in this moment. Is that exciting? Is there a big dramatic story here? No, but sometimes I find it helps to explore these little moments. And I find them just as important as, the epic space battle. Because if we don't understand an individual person's thoughts and feelings when they're on their own, we're never going to understand, people's thoughts and feelings as they're going through these big events and these big exciting moments. And if you want to give more life to your story other than punch, kick, boom, pow, fly fast, jump off building, all those sort of basic notes. If you can add some value, if you contribute a little bit more to that character's headspace, like where you see in a Western comic where, say, Spider-Man is swinging through the city and he's talking about, I hope I get home in time to, so I don't miss Aunt May's pot roast, and she discovers that I'm actually Spider-Man, or whatever the narrative therein is. We know more about Peter this way. We know more about Spider-Man as well this way, because if you look at the two of them as distinctly separate characters, you're only going to draw Spider-Man going, "That was good, I fought crime. Now I need a pause." That's not as exciting. But if you've got Peter Parker, in his Spider-Man costume, fretting about being late for pot roast, now we see a deeper complexity of our character, because here's this character who is this noble, heroic ideal that is making sacrifices for the safety and betterment of others. But he's a teenage kid who's got to get home in time for pot roast. And so you can sell that across better if you allow that sort of overlay of information versus visual information. And the two do not have to be the same. The two do not have to, but they'll go hand in hand, but the two do not have to be singing the same song. Like if I'm drawing no basement pizzeria on the building, I don't have to put a little word caption right here that says at a pizza, meanwhile at a pizzeria, because we've done that. It's a redundancy, right? It's in the visual image. And so because it's in the visual image, it saves that having to be the case. I often find that when you get combinations of artists and writers working together, and if they're not, here's the script and the writer is put forward, say, and they've paid an artist to illustrate it, and the artist illustrates the script, and then when it comes to the finishes and they're doing lettering, if the artist has made up for things, like instead of like putting the pizzeria sign on the front of the business, and the author still thinks it's necessary to say at a pizzeria downtown, they're not working together, right? It's the same as if an independent individual who's writing and illustrating does the same thing. He's not getting the fact that he can use one thing to make up for the other. And by making up for the other, in this case text, with the visual stuff, it allows you to do something more with the text than just regurgitate what you've got with the visual. So it's something to watch for, and it's something if you're doing your own stuff to think about. Um, you know, here's a spaceship flying across the scene. You know, in a spaceship. I can't believe we're in this spaceship. Again, unnecessary, right? Unless it's going to go a step farther than that, right? If they're in a spaceship and one of the characters looks at another one and says, "Can you believe we're not even on the Earth anymore? Like, how did this happen?" Then you've got, we're in a spaceship, but again, the writing aspect of it's been reevaluated and added something more. It's no longer about being in a spaceship. It's about, we're not on Earth because we're in a spaceship, right? So yeah, think about stuff like that when you're working on your stories, whether you're doing the visual part or the textual part. Think about the union between the two of them. The fact that one of those things, can solicit the main idea and allow the other one of those things to further another idea into the mix or to add another layer of sophistication to it. It's interesting. And so things like this, when you sit down and you look at stories, it sort of gives you an insight into how a team goes about creating a project. And it gives you an insight into, is this just by the note, or is this a greater melody? Because it helps. It helps to evaluate sometimes the things that we're looking at, and the things that we enjoy, and what are the ingredients in the food that you like, or what is it about your favorite song that is so appealing to you? What is it about that? Not to the extent, like sometimes people break things down to the point that they disassemble them and strip them of their allure. But you can still find out a deeper notion on the thing without it completely ruining it. There's a band, I cannot remember the name of course, and they've got a song where it's about the 4 different chords that are in all kinds of different contemporary music. And so they start playing these 4 chords and strumming the varied riffs for each of these different songs and in their very different speeds, and show you that all of these songs have the same underlying structure. It doesn't negate the songs and their interest, but it makes you realize, oh, there's a tonality, there's a principal tonality in pop music that I enjoy. So it's kind of fun, stuff like that. I hate music. I don't want to learn about any music. I don't know. I'm being silly. Okay, so we've got, I'm not going to go all the way up to the next window, I think. I think we'll cut here because the page isn't going to go this high. So, but putting in these bricks and these pieces of information we're still going to do this. So, okay, so there's where things are going to go for our second floor. So there's our windows that are in here. So if we put a line across, say, here, where this line is at the bottom of the ruler. Am I still in the other thing? I am, yeah. I started drawing before I flipped over, I'm sorry. There we go. So if we've got our windows here and then we start cutting the top of the frame right here, okay, then this sort of gives us a complete view of the front of the place. There's our pizzeria introduction, and right away we go into the next image, and that next image will be a concierge greeting us and saying, So is it your first time to the city, or is it your first time to the restaurant, and by that, we're right into the mix. We're right into our story already. I'm about an hour and a half in, and I think, because I have a couple things I got to get done, I'm going to call it for today. It's Wednesday. I think Yolanda might be streaming today. Devin Rex for Art. She's got some brilliant things with jelly plating. I'll be doing some mixed media stuff tomorrow, I think, folks, and we'll see how that. We'll see what the suggestion is that comes in for that. But if you have any other suggestions you want to put forward, please let me know, and we'll do those. We'll put them in the book, and we'll do those as we come along. So it's we're having a lot of fun. I figure the rate that I'm moving right now on pages, because I'm doing a one-page story each day, and I'm right now finding myself able to finish one of the side project pages. Maybe not in whole. It might be just the pencils the one day, the inks the next day. So it's about a page and a half I'm getting done right now at this point, and feeling good about it. Tomorrow I'll be here, I think at 2 o'clock, unless I've got a message about an appointment that's come in. Just let me check quick, and I can confirm yeah or nay on that. And well, I'll let you know. But generally, I'll be here 1 or 2 tomorrow. And if you guys are able to come and join in, please feel free to do so. That's about it for me for now. Thanks very much, everybody, for coming by. And I hope you have a great day. And take a look in the stories that you enjoy reading that have a fusion of words and pictures. Take a look at those and see if there's, redundancies. See if there's recurring elements, like a picture of a spaceship and people go, we're on a spaceship, or something similar in regards to that. Or a bunch of people in the bottom of a pit. You see the pit and they're like, I can't believe we're in this pit. So take a look for things like that in your stories. It's kind of interesting when you start looking for things like that, because it makes you consider more about how you're applying those things, or how you're trying not to apply that in that way. Okay, thanks very much, everybody. I'll be back tomorrow in the afternoon, 1 or 2 o'clock, and I'll see you then. In the meantime, take care. Thanks very much to Linda, the moderator with the mostest, and everybody else that's come by and joined in the chat. Bye for now.